My name is Jennifer Gill, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Zerto. We're very excited for you to hear from one of our great customers, St. Leo University. A couple of housekeeping things before we move on from the first slide. One, of course, is I have to point out our awards. We're very proud of those. We got Best of Show at VMworld in 2011, and then, of course, the Gold Award for Business Continuity and Data Protection. And since then, we've added several other awards as well. Also, we will be taking questions. So in the panel that popped up on the right-hand side of my screen, you'll see there's a questions tab in there. If you type them in throughout the webinar, we'll be taking them at the end, and we may sprinkle a few throughout the webinar as well. So here is our agenda for today. I'll introduce our speaker, Christopher Wagner. He'll talk about St. Leo University, the environment, the challenges of BCDR, and what they looked at for BCDR and why Zerto. And then I will take us through an overview of Zerto virtual replication. So Christopher probably looks like a lot of you on the phone. He's a server administrator level 2. He has over 20 years of IT experience and has a couple of certifications there from Microsoft. His responsibilities include all of disaster recovery for worldwide student access. That includes physical and virtual. He's responsible for data continuity planning and information availability, and also is charged with all the storage configuration and management. And so at this point, I am going to turn it over to Christopher.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Chris Wagner. I've been with St. Leo University for several years now, and we are a small to medium college in the Tampa area. We are one of the top 5 Catholic universities in the United States in regards to the number of students that we have. The majority of our students, the curriculum delivery takes place through an online interface. We have several different delivery methods, and one of our largest bases of students is military personnel. So we literally have people accessing our curriculum systems 24 hours a day from all over the world. So we have an expectation of functioning within the 4 to 6 nines area. So our availability of content to the students is really important. So one of the things that we needed to be able to make sure was a part of our DR plan was something that was not only going to be rock solid, but something that was going to give us a decent RTO to allow us to bring out those systems up to the students in the event that we should have some kind of disaster. Being in the Tampa area, one of the things that, of course, we always have to be concerned about is hurricanes. So luckily, usually a hurricane, a little bit in advance, so we're able to, move systems if we should need to. So, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide if we could, Jennifer. One of the things that that we've really started to experience over the last few years is a pretty substantial increase in our student base. We've gone from about 15,000 students 2.5 years ago to a little bit over 22,000 to date. And so that increase has caused us to have to grow leaps and bounds and have to do it quickly and in as efficient manner as possible. When we started looking at our DR solution, we started talking about how we were going to handle that. We broke things out to a tiered approach. We have our business processes, which are part of Tier 1, but because we have the level of access that we need our students to have, really our student systems are also Tier 1 and some are Tier 2. But they're definitely things that we have to be able to get up and running quickly in the event that they go down. We are currently protecting 29 VMs, and that covers actually anywhere from between 3 terabytes to 7 or 8 terabytes depending on how we break out our machines and we compact them into VPGs, which we'll talk about here a little bit later. Our school management system, if you will, our ERP, is Colleague DataTel, and we have a whole host of other homegrown solutions we've built ourselves, but also other web servers and things like that that are a part of our DR infrastructure. So as we start to look at DR, some of the things that we needed to be able to figure out was how do we create functional DR without spending just ridiculous amounts of money and making DR something that we had to potentially hamstring ourselves with a lesser product because we couldn't afford something that we thought we needed. So as we started to put this together, we started to build our tiers out. We identified that it's a very easy thing to confuse DR with HA. Anytime that administration or the corporate infrastructure says, well, the systems are down, we need you to get them up, or we're during in a maintenance window and we need to keep this up while you guys are doing work, that's not really DR. And so one of the most important things that we started to address was what your DR capabilities are, what your DR plan is, and then what your HA includes. If your HA and your high availability is something that you need, you can leverage the same software process that you use to accomplish that as you do with DR, but it's really important, we found, that you keep those two separate, because if not, the attitude of just being able to move things back and forth and actually perform a DR event during a time when it wasn't appropriate was something that we really had to look at. The other thing that we were very concerned about was that we needed to know that whatever solution we used, that there was a level of competency and service that we needed, because with our systems being as they are, if we have a problem or we have something that's not functioning, we need someone who is not going to just tear us out and say, well, this is a severity level 2 or a severity level 3. With Zerto, we have an experience that anytime that we had something that was down or we had something that was a problem, it was really treated with the severity that we felt that it was. That wasn't tiered out for us, which is something that was, for us, a huge advantage. We looked at several other solutions, and one of the processes, one of the softwares that we had used to do our DR in the past is a product called Double Take. And what we found is that the Double Take was good at some things, but was not necessarily as good at moving the data and making the systems available as we knew something could be for a VM environment. Okay, Jennifer. So the Double Take, we found that for SQL clusters and Exchange that live on physical machines, Double Take did a pretty good job. It is a respectable, go live time. Some functions to be able to do that, and it was acceptable. It was an acceptable process. So we've kept our physical environment functioning on Double Take, and it works, and that's been a good thing. But being over 95% virtualized, what we found is that we really needed something that was going to give us the ability to protect our virtual machines in a fashion that when we had a catastrophe or we had something out, not only could we perform DR, but we could perform DR from another location. And what I mean by that is that if we go black on campus and everything is completely dead, somewhere we can actually bring things alive and make them functional at our DR site, which happens to be in Atlanta. So some of the different things that we looked at during the process is we looked at things that were specifically designed to be used for virtual machine replication, virtual machine protection, if you will. Some of the big names that we looked at were Veeam and vRanger. We had used vRanger in the past. We found it to be a little complex for the user and a little bit slow, and it really feels like more of a backup product, more of a data protection than it does a DR solution in the way that we were utilizing it. The way that it works is similar to Zerto, but its functionality we found was completely different. The Veeam, which is another big name that you see out there, we took a look at it, and once again, it was really something that was kind of more of a data continuity, or of a data protection piece than it was a DR piece. The way that it functioned was a little odd to us, and it was just not, it wasn't the product that we needed, at the time, and we looked at. So we started to dig a little deeper, and we found Zerto, and we had never heard of Zerto before, and so the first thing that popped up in our head was, well, what's Zerto? Is this some new fad thing, some new company that's trying to, ride on the coattails of these other companies? And what we found out right away is that it was not. We found out that it was leveraging the technology was there, but in a new way. The way that the replication is handled, the way that the information is moved across, the ease of the use of the application was huge for us, because unfortunately, you never know who is going to have to execute the DR in a DR situation. You may have personnel that have different levels of comfort with a particular software. And I can tell you that with Zerto, we have, and our team that is responsible for DR, we have 7 individuals with varying levels of IT experience, and without any formal training at all, and in about 15-20 minutes, every single one of those individuals can completely set up a VPG, set up replication, and perform a failover test. And for us, that was huge, because all too often you purchase a software package and then you have to buy professional services for training, or you have to send someone to training, or it's complicated enough that someone has to actually stop what they're doing and go and learn the software. For us, that was huge, because it was easy enough for everyone to use. It's already there in your vCenter window, which you're already in. So it just made sense to us that this was the solution that was what we were looking for. The other thing that we really appreciated about Zerto was that it's very clearly a DR solution. There's no discussion about this being a backup product. This isn't a way to back up your VMs. Now, could you do it to back up your VMs? Sure, you absolutely could. But this is for DR. This is something that very much speaks to how quickly you can take a down system to a live state in a specified period of time in an easy fashion. So one of the things that when we did our POC, that we found was that we had an expectation based on tests that we had done with previous solutions that had our expected go live times anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. So I can tell you the first day of the POC, I got a phone call from the sales gentleman, and I, being an IT salesperson calls, you kind of check out a little bit. You're just like, okay, here's a sales guy. He's trying to peddle the product, blah, blah, blah. I can tell you that that's not the experience that I had. The experience I had was, how can we help you? How can we help you achieve what it is that you're trying to achieve? And on that phone call, we set up a plan for the POC, and I was given an engineer to work with, and I worked with that engineer within a 2-hour period because of some scheduling issues. We were going to be out for a long period of time, and we weren't going to be able to do it. So schedules were moved around. People, really jumped through a lot of hoops just to be able to work with us to show us the product. Once I worked with the engineer, it was installed, it was in place, and I believe less than an hour. And we were completely ready to go. And that included the training that he gave me. Very knowledgeable, and it was one of those situations where I was kind of surprised. And so I was kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Okay, what's going to go wrong? What's not going to work? And the ease of installing it was pretty substantial because I had blocked out 2 or 3 days to do this POC, and literally it only took me one afternoon. So for me, that was really an important component to this. So after it was all installed and the POC was on, every day I was getting update emails from the engineer saying, are you having any issues? Is there anything I can help you with? And I really appreciated that. I didn't feel like I was being sold. I felt like I was being given a solution. I was being given an opportunity to make a decision. So that was huge for us. So over the period of the POC, we had full support. Had a few hiccups here and there as the learning curve goes, and as we tried to do things and try to break it. Quite honestly, that's one of the functions of my position is to take a solution that looks like it works and find a way to break it. So I worked pretty hard to break it, and I was happy to find that I really wasn't able to. And the little bit that I did get to not work was fixed with a 5-minute phone call. So that was a huge thing. Once we made the decision to purchase the Zerto solution, which was very easy, very simple, we had everything in place, and I don't believe in going POC to production, so I had to completely uninstall everything, completely redo everything, and on my own without having to do that, it literally took probably 20 minutes to set everything back up again and have the replication that I was testing actually functioning in production again. So that was very good. We've had the product now, I think, for probably going on 7 or 8 months. And I can say that during that 7 or 8 months, we've had a couple little things. We built out a few new vCenters that we needed to implement, and we've had a couple items, and I can honestly say that every time we've called support, there's been a knowledgeable person ready and willing to help immediately. And it wasn't a situation where we had to figure out when someone was going to call us back and whether we were going to get, quote-unquote, a good tech on the line to be able to help us out. Everyone we've talked to has been great. Okay, Jennifer?
Okay, great. Thank you,
So I think that Jennifer is going to break back in here. And thanks for everybody, and if there's any questions, I'll be here at the end. Yeah, I think we can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, great. So looks like we might have a little bit of phone issues on my end. If that's the case, then we do have Shannon Snowden on the line, who's our Senior Technical Marketing Architect. So he'll be able to take you through the slides. So what I'm going to do is now Christopher has given you his great perspective on the product. So I'm going to take you through a little bit more detail on the product. So first, if you look at what a BCDR process looks like in an environment today, to achieve those very aggressive storage service levels, you probably are using storage-based replication with some sort of virtualization orchestration tool. And these are all the steps that we have mapped out with one of our other customers to say, hey, what do you think it takes to protect an application? They said, wow, You know, you have to find all your VMs, map them to the LUN, and make sure the relationships are there, etc. So here you can see that, one, it's a lot of steps. Two, you probably have to re-architect storage and re-architect your VMware environment in some way, which is not really something you want to do. And the ongoing management and maintenance is challenging because as you make changes, you have to update this plan. So with Zerto, we take this complex, manual, and inflexible process and boil it down to 5 very, very simple steps. You just select the, you work with the storage team, make sure you have enough storage on the target site, select the VMs that you want to protect. You'll configure the virtual protection group, and we'll talk about what that is. And then you have ongoing management and maintenance. And that's it. And as you make changes in your environment, because we are a hypervisor-based replication solution, we're aware of those changes. So there's not a whole lot of updating and management required. So with that, we have Zerto Virtual Replication. So, and we are virtual aware. What do I mean by that? I mean we replicate VMs and VMDKs. We don't care about LUNs, we don't care about files, any of those things. We replicate what you want to protect, the virtual machine. It's a software-only solution. So this means it's going to scale a lot easier if you have a physical appliance and you have, say, 3 or 4 ESX hosts hooked up to it. Probably works okay. You get that number up to 8, 10, 12. Now you have a scalability issue. With Zerto, that won't happen. And then Tier 1 Enterprise Class. So what do we mean by that? That's really more along the lines of protecting your production workloads. So the workloads that your end users need access to, take a test, get class materials, close an order, create whatever it is that your company sells. So that's what we mean there. And the 3 features there that are important are application consistency, the journal capability, which we'll talk a little bit about, but that gives you the continuous data protection and point-in-time recovery, and then the very aggressive service levels. So RPOs of seconds, RTOs of minutes. So we're going to go through a very simple architecture. I say simple because here we have 2 sites, and Zerto is able to protect multiple sites. So we have the Zerto Virtual Manager. That's the only piece of software that you'll touch. As Christopher mentioned, it's a plug-in right into vCenter, so you are not going to another place to manage within your VMware environment. You're going right to vCenter, which is where you go today anyway. That Zerto Virtual Manager will push out the Zerto Virtual Replication appliances. Those are very lightweight pieces of software that install on each ESX host within the environment. That's what does the actual replication. So you can see it's hardware agnostic, so we can replicate from anything to anything. So if you have different kinds of arrays, older arrays that you want to use, with Zerto, because we don't care about the underlying storage, you can really maximize your investment and extend the useful life of your storage assets. Highly scalable, we talked about that already. But as you can see, just as you add another ESX host, you just install another Zerto Virtual Replication appliance. And I also want to stress there that it's an appliance, not an agent. This does not require ongoing care feeding management. The Zerto Virtual Manager will maintain that appliance for you. The continuous block level replication delivers almost synchronous replication. We call it near synchronous replication, and that's what delivers those very, very aggressive service levels. The journal is like a TiVo for your environment. So it records all the happenings within the application. It's 1 hour up to 5 days worth of data. And if you were to join us in 2 weeks, on November 19th, you'd see Shannon do a demo. And there's a data point every few seconds that you can sail back to. So for example, if you didn't upgrade today at 1 o'clock, the upgrade didn't go that well, roll back the environment to 12:59 in 53 seconds. And we also put in some bandwidth optimization, resiliency features to make sure that we're not dominating the network. This is a problem for several of our customers who were using storage-based replication. Just the size of the information sent over the network gets to be dominating, and then production applications have to kind of wait. So we do some compression and throttling to make sure that that network is available to your end users to do the work that they need to do. And we also support, so we talked about kind of 2 vCenters. If you do have some local and remote branch offices who are physically separated but virtually are within the same vCenter, you can also replicate to within that virtual vCenter but separated physically. And then, of course, we'd recommend you do some sort of HA on your vCenter server to ensure availability. Okay, so the virtual protection groups. So Christopher mentioned this as well. So we know that your data needs to be available, but when someone's calling you and complaining to you, they're not saying, I can't access this table space. They're saying, I can't get into Exchange, SharePoint's not working, SQL Server's not working, something like that. I can't get into the financials application. So with Zerto, we have something called a virtual protection group. And you can take all the VMs associated with that application and put them together in a virtual protection group. Now, no matter where those VMs are in the environment, the BCDR policies that you configured will be applied to those VMs. Even as you use things like DRS and move VMs around, or vMotion or storage vMotion, your BCDR policies will not be affected. And this is also, we have some BSS support. So if you want to put in those extra application consistent checkpoints, we certainly can support that as well. So we've talked a lot about the data and the application and ensuring that the data is where it needs to be and all those things. But how do we make the data usable? There's orchestration events that need to be executed as well. And Zerto, recognizing that any manual step is an opportunity for an error, we've automated those processes. So it includes full automated orchestration of your BCDR plans. So we have the data, it gets replicated over to your target site, and within the virtual protection groups, we've set things up like boot order, re-IPing if that needs to be done. So once you need to fail over, Zerto will begin to build the virtual machines on the target site according to the configuration you've specified. I want to stress that we don't have shadow VMs, so there's nothing on the target site that needs to be managed. They'll be created when they're needed. The click to test anytime, so if you do need to run DR testing, which is, many industries today require some sort of compliance and some sort of disaster recovery testing. With Zerto, it's really easy. We can do some testing in a bubble network. Production will be protected at all times. You'll continue replicating data. And if in the middle of the DR test, say you have to, oh no, I have to fail over, something's happened, you can stop the test on a dime and then begin your failover processes as well. Much, much simpler process compared with other solutions. And then finally, we have offsite cloning. So this enables you to make a complete copy of the application on your replicated site. This can then be used for backup, test dev, other uses like that. We also have web-based disaster recovery management. So if you don't want to give someone vCenter access, they're able to access the complete Zerto product from the web. So you have full capabilities there with the ability to execute tests. No vSphere clients required. Actually, Shannon and I were talking with one of our other customers. What they did is just put this link in their SharePoint database, and now their directors and other managers can just go in and execute reports. So someone who you don't want to give vCenter credentials, here's a way to give them access to the information that they need. And you can do failover, test, failback. So we have comprehensive reports. So we talked about audit requirements. Here we have something called a resource report. So you can see all the steps that are executed during a recovery, the time for each of those steps, and now you'll be able to predict your recovery time. This is also through the DR testing, but now you have a document that you can give to auditors. So for example, one of our customers, the Philadelphia contribution ship, he knows that he can fail over SharePoint in 2 minutes and 43 seconds. So he's able to say that, hey, this will be up and running on the target site in less than 3 minutes. It gives his management a great deal of confidence to know that the tool will be able to support their aggressive service levels. We also have some resource planning reports so you can see how consumption is changing. This gives you the VM, what a VM is consuming on the production site and the target site in terms of storage and bandwidth to help you see, how's my environment growing and changing? How do I need to plan for the next year? So for those environments that do some chargeback, you're able to collect information on a ZVM basis. So for larger organizations, we find that they bill back to marketing or they bill back to finance. So here you can show them, here's a report, here are the resources you're consuming within IT. So we really consider ourselves the cloud platform for BCDR. We've talked a lot about private cloud. So similar to Christopher's organization where they own both sites and they do replication between those sites. And that's private cloud BCDR. We also do disaster recovery as a service. So you have your production workload on your site and you're replicating to a cloud provider. This is a great way to evaluate the cloud. And then for those applications that are just really challenging altogether, give it to the cloud provider altogether. Let them manage the production and replication. So we're really ready for the public, private, and hybrid cloud. So we've covered on all these points. So virtual aware, built for your production workloads, and ready for the cloud. I think one thing that Christopher really emphasizes is the simplicity of the solution. When you look at BCDR and trying to test it, if any of you have run a test, it can take a lot of time. To set up BCDR is challenging. It's not easy until you get to Zerto. And then, what Christopher said is what I hear from many of our customers. I run our reference program and allow them to say, it seemed too good to be true. He kept saying all the right things, but I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then they get it installed and do a proof of concept, and they're just amazed. And that's one of the main reasons why we love having customers like Christopher on with us, because you hear it from a customer who's using the product. So if you have any questions, certainly you can reach out to any one of us. I do have a couple of questions that came in. So for anyone else on the line, as I mentioned, just use that tab to type in the questions. And the first one we have, so Shannon, I think this is for you. So as I mentioned, we have Shannon Snowden on the line, our Senior Technical Marketing Architect. So Shannon, the VM replicated to replication site, will it have the same IP address?
Hey, Jen. It can if you want it to, but it also can, as part of the workflow, you can change the IP address for both the production or move network and then a test network. So let's say the non-disruptive testing that you want to do in order to know that your failover is going to be successful is you may want to isolate that onto a isolated network at the recovery site, and you can do that as part of the workflow. And that gets back to what Jen's talking about as far as the automation. It's not that we automate the testing, we automate the steps in the workflow to where you can hit a red button, which is an arrow actually, and do the failover in full confidence that each of the steps in the workflow, including changing IP addresses, boot order, etc., have all been tested to where, as Jen was talking about earlier, you get very predictable RTOs, and you know what the recovery time is for those VMs.
Great, Shannon. So I think I can answer this question, but Chris or Shannon, if you want to jump in after I give my answer, that would be great. So someone asked, can Zerto protect file level, NFS/iSCSI? So we absolutely can protect any kind of virtual machine. As long as VMware supports the storage, Zerto supports the storage. So we don't care about the underlying constructs, whether you're using, NFS, iSCSI, STAMP protocols, LUNs. It doesn't matter. If VMware can support the storage, then Zerto can absolutely replicate the VM. It doesn't matter what's underlying there. Shannon and Chris, anything to add?
Yeah, the thing that this is Chris, the thing that I would add is that Zerto can protect that data as long as it is present within the hypervisor. And an example that I would give of that is that previously we had a project where we had a SQL server that had iSCSI LUNs attached to the machine. So we had data sitting in there that was accessible through the VM, but really wasn't a part of the VM infrastructure. So the DR on that process that we were testing was going to require us to execute 2 separate DR initiatives. And what we found is that the time for live on that was going to be anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, simply because we had to fail over the data piece of it that wasn't in the VMware environment. So what we did is we converted the data on those iSCSI attached LUNs, and we just created VMDKs within the system, moved that data over to the VMDK. So now all of the data that pertained to that virtual machine was present as a VMDK and was actually in the VMware environment. And we were able to cut that time to live down to actually 9 minutes. So it definitely can protect that as long as it's a part of the VMware environment.
Great, perfect. So Shannon, I think this one might be for you. So it says, you mean the Zerto can reconfigure the IP, how about the computer name?
Yeah, so if you want to reconfigure the computer name, that would be something you probably want to execute a script against. And we, as part of that failover workflow, you have the opportunity to do pre-failover and post-failover scripts. So in that event, what you would do is just have it call a script as part of that failover plan, and then you could have all of your machines, whatever name you want to give them, when they come back up, a different computer name, and execute the reboot to get the machine up and operational. So we do support that by virtue of the extensibility of being able to do pre-post scripting as part of the workflow.
And another piece of that also, Shannon, that we've really embraced is that when you have multiple virtual machines within a virtual protection group, you can control in what order those machines are brought to life. Right. So if you have a machine that needs to come up, needs to be functional before another machine comes up, you actually can control that happening, which is a really good feature.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, great. So I can answer this question, but Chris, if you want to jump in. So someone asked, does Zerto show the overall impact of the replication of the VMs to the DR site? In other words, what will be the impact on the network when the data is synced on a day-to-day or hour-by-hour basis based on the number of VMs that are protected? Is there a way to know that ahead of time? And the answer is yes. We have some network sizing tools that we can provide to you that will help you measure your bandwidth requirements. And Chris, I don't know if you had any experience. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. I was wondering if you have any experience using that tool from Zerto.
We do, and we were able to. One of the things that we found to be very valuable is that when you set up the replication, when you set it up to your DR site, there's going to be that initial synchronization of data. There's going to be that initial seeding isn't necessarily the right terminology, but there's going to be that initial seeding of data. The thing that we really like about the freedom that we have with that is that we can control at what speed that's done. We know that if we need to be, have 5-minute journaling, as Jennifer had mentioned, if we need to have that close in time, or if we need to be at an hour, we could break that up to be able to make that a little more manageable. Now, the one thing that you really can't plan for is if you have an applications group, or if you have a group of users or what have you on that application that dumps a ton of data in there all at once. With any solution, if someone dumps, a couple hundred gig of data into the system, and assuming that you have the storage there that you've configured so that they can take that data, obviously as soon as that data comes through as a change, it's going to start moving that up block by block. So that's one of those things that you can be mindful of. The way that we have addressed that issue, because we did have that initially, and the way we address that issue is with drive space monitors and how quickly they change. So realistically, through SNMP, if anyone is to add a particular amount of data at any given time, we're alerted so that we know that we need to take a look and go in and check the Zerto and say, okay, we know that this is now pushing a lot more data than it was previously, and then we can check our network bandwidth between campus and the DR site to see what kind of hit that's taking, and if we need to pull that back or change that, we can.
Yeah, and to add to that, if necessary, if you monitor that and let's say you have that data burst and it's predictable, let's say it's end of the month processing or something, what you can do is there's several ways to throttle bandwidth between sites. One of them would be using the throttle at the site level. We can throttle the amount going through, but you can also throttle it on a schedule. So if you know that you for the most part, your bandwidth is very predictable, but at a certain point in the day or whatever, you can add more or take some away. And then, of course, the other would be if you're not wanting to get the alerts that you're exceeding your RPO of, let's say, 5 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever it is, that there's a reason why we allow you to go longer as far as before you get an alert, because that's part of the normal traffic. You're getting a data burst, and that's predictable. But as Chris was talking about, the way that they're monitoring is a really good way to see it too. That way you're alerted that you may need to enable compression or some other type of throttling to manage that workload.
Okay, great, thanks, Shannon. And then that person asked the question is wondering if the sizing tool is included or if it's an extra cost. It's actually we give it to you. It's just an Excel spreadsheet. So you go into vSphere vCenter. We ask you for a couple parameters. You put them into the tool, and I'll tell you what you need. So yeah, you have the initial thing, but then we look at ongoing basis, kind of the normal performance in the environment to let you know what you can expect Zerto to consume on a daily basis. And then someone asked, what's the way how do you sync up the data initially between production, DR, if they're living in 2 continents? So we have something called a preceding feature. So you can save the information locally on like some sort of drive, ship it to the site, and upload it that way. And Shannon can add a little bit more there because he's actually done it.
Yeah, I mean, what you described is perfectly accurate to what you would do, because you don't really necessarily want to, across the wire, let's say you have a terabyte of data, you really want to not have to cover that across the wire, replicate it. You would do as Jen said, just put it on a disk, transport it, put it on a data store that's available to the cluster at the recovery site, and then as part of the configuration of a virtual protection group, we're granular to the level of the VMDK. So let's say it's an E drive is a separate VMDK as part of the virtual machine that has all the data. Well, what you can do is you can go to that individual VMDK and identify the location of the preceded VMDK files that are at the target data store, map directly to that VMDK, and then what we'll do is just a delta sync between what's there and what's at the source site.
Yeah, we do have customers who are doing replication between two continents. I'm thinking about one in particular. They're doing replication from Waltham, which is just about 15 miles outside of Boston, and they're replicating to London. So we do have many customers that do that. And then we have another customer replicating from Texas to Dubai. So I don't think they sent all that information over the wire either. So.
But then again, we have other customers who will acquire data centers as part of their business expansion, and they just work in, even with slow network connections, that they want to get Zerto installed and allow us to do the replication because they really don't have admins at that remote site that know anything about connecting a disk or getting it on there or anything. So for them, the solution is using the wire to precede back to, it wouldn't really at that point be preceding, it would just be replicating, but they're using the throttling mechanisms that Zerto has, compression that we have, to get it to, they will allow the duration as part of acquisition of a data center, and then what they'll do is figure out whether they want to keep that data center online or migrate it to their main data center because the replication's already there. And as Christopher talked about, you're looking at an RPO of seconds, so it's a matter of just shutting down the source site and bringing up the target site in a move operation that Zerto has. And they do that as a practice of, this is how we do acquisitions. We connect the sites, we allow it to replicate, and then we can migrate to our data center. So it's elegant in a lot of ways. I've been doing some testing with our compression at a VPG level recently, and it's pretty amazing the amount of compression capability that we have, taking you from a lot of megs per second of replication down to, a third of a meg. It's pretty amazing, and it's very efficient.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shannon. So that is, I thought we were done with questions, but one more snuck in. So someone asked about using Zerto over vSphere applications. So I'll give a couple points there, and I know Shannon has many, many more. So probably the biggest one that we hear about a lot is the service levels that you look at, what VMware is pushing for vSphere application versus what we actually deliver. So with vSphere, they really position it more for Tier 2 and Tier 3 workloads. They're looking at, an RPO of 15 minutes at best. So with Zerto, we would deliver seconds pretty regularly. The customer Shane was talking about, they have a 3 megabit per second connection between two sites separated by about 1,000 miles, and he's giving a 6-second RPO, which is just unbelievable. Different versions of vSphere, so with Zerto, we know you're not going to magically upgrade your entire environment. So with VMware vSphere, you need to have exact matching versions of vSphere to use vSphere application. With Zerto, we're a little bit more tolerant. As long as you have vSphere 4.1 and higher, you're all set with Zerto. So, and Shannon, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, you've brought us many good points. I think one of them that I would add would be the right order of fidelity between the virtual machines and the protection group, because what we do have and what vSphere application doesn't have, even when you add SRM to it, is the capability of the idea of a VPG, all of the VMs that are in a virtual protection group, Zerto virtual protection group, we've put them into that virtual protection group for a reason, because they're maybe a database and a web and a mid-level server, that makes up this application. Well, it's very important when you're doing a point-in-time recovery that all 3 of those servers, or 5 of those servers, or 100 of those servers, whatever the number is, that they're consistent with each other, and that's that write-over fidelity. And that's just another feature that vSphere doesn't have, vSphere replication, that we do. And it's an overall characterization of comparing us versus vSphere replication, even with SRM. It's not really a fair to them comparison because we're geared toward all of the features that makes array-based replication attractive, plus SRM and all its orchestration, but you strip out all the complexity and you make it very simple and you make it more powerful because it's at the VMDK level of granularity. So it's a bit of an unfair comparison to them because we're just, Jen's got checklists she can send you that just shows you at every comparison point. And one of the main things is just ease of use as well.
Yeah, and you heard Christopher talk about that today, just how easy it is, an hour to install. If you'd like to do a proof of concept, we would love for anyone who's interested to contact us and, installed in an hour. You heard it right from the horse's mouth, right from one of our customers. So we would absolutely love to get it installed in your site, try it out, bang on it, see how it compares. We'd love to do that. Okay, so I think that really is the last question. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Christopher, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to talk about Zerto.
No worries. Thank you very much. And then anyone feel free to contact me with any questions.
Great. Thank you again. All right, everyone. Have a great day.